Hey guys, this is Nat from the Movement and Wellbeing Clinic, and today I'm going to talk to you about regenerative injections from research I did for a presentation last weekend. So we're going over 3 injection types, which is Prolotherapy, platelet-rich plasma therapy, and peptide therapy. Starting with Prolotherapy, this is a glucose injection, which is usually used in joints, tendons, or ligaments. And effectively, the theory of it is you inject glucose into it, and that causes local irritation in that tissue. That local irritation then promotes what's called proliferation of cells in that tissue, which then brings lots of ideally new cells to there and lots of inflammatory cells that then start the inflammatory process and then begins a healing process. So that's the theory behind Prolotherapy, nice and simple. And then we've got platelet-rich plasma therapy. This is a little bit more involved. This is where you will take a blood sample from the patient. That platelet sample is then the blood sample is put into a centrifuge, which is one of those whizzy devices which effectively splits parts of the blood to get certain substances that you're trying to find. In this case, what we're trying to get is what's called platelet-rich plasma. So the platelets are a component of the blood that's generally used for blood clotting. So we're trying to do that and then separate those from the rest of the blood sample. That platelet-rich plasma sample is then injected back in. Having the high concentration of platelets, in theory, provides lots of the components for blood clotting, and then again you're causing inflammation and then proliferation of cells in that area, which hopefully will start a healing cascade to promote tissue healing. Lastly, we've got peptides, and peptides are effectively amino acids, which amino acids are the the building blocks of proteins. And so we've got lots of naturally occurring amino acids and peptides in the human body. Some ones that are already used widely for healing is, an example would be insulin. Insulin is a peptide that helps to promote absorption of glucose from the blood and therefore stopping high levels of blood glucose, which is bad for people with diabetes who don't produce their own insulin. But recently there has been a surge of new artificially made peptides. One in particular that I'm looking at is called BPC157 that has some research saying that it's useful for tissue healing because it basically promotes new blood vessel formation in injured tissues, and again that's helping to get lots of blood supply and new cells to that area and help with tissue healing. So let's break down what does the research say. I'm going to clump Prolotherapy and platelet-rich plasma therapy together. And the research, there is actually quite a lot of research available. However, the research is quite iffy. It's very sort of controversial up and down. There's a lot of things that say that there is a lot of effectiveness to it, but there's also a lot that says that it's maybe not any better than, for example, just like a saline or like a control injection that's just not supposed to have any positive except placebo. But from some of the mixed results, it does look like there is some potential that it could be as effective in a lot of cases as corticosteroids. So that's one really useful thing, is corticosteroids can have quite a lot of long-term side effects. So that's a nice perk. And Prolotherapy, in theory, is quite a cheap injection due to effectively just being injecting sugar. Platelet-rich plasma therapy, on the other hand, is more expensive due to it being a longer process and a little bit more difficult with taking blood and then putting it into a centrifuge and then re-injecting it again. So, in fact, from the research, the PRP and the Prolotherapy come out pretty much the same for all of the conditions. So like I said before, tendons, ligaments, and joints issues, they come out very much similar. So I was almost considering that if you compare the two, you're almost looking at like a supermarket budget bottle of water versus a San Pellegrino expensive water. They both do the same thing. Hopefully they both quench your thirst, but one is vastly more expensive than the other. And that's kind of how I sort of see it. And then if we go into peptide therapy, then this is the BPC 157 in particular is something that has just very small amount of research. And although there's a lot of anecdote out there, a lot of celebrity endorsement, there's hardly any research to really support it. But we just don't know basically at the minute. Okay, so then coming to would we recommend these therapies? So how I see it is, in my opinion, these could be a fantastic alternative to corticosteroids, and they're definitely worth considering because of the less side effects that you're likely to get from them. And especially I'm thinking more about the PRP and the Prolotherapy. They also, in theory, especially the Prolotherapy is effectively quite cheap. It should, in theory, be quite cheap. In the UK at the minute, it's actually about the same price as PRP, but that's because it's not widely used in the UK. So hopefully the price will start to come down. We generally recommend that injections such as these and corticosteroids are all things that should be considered for those issues mentioned after you've trialed at least 2 to 3 months of osteopathy care or physiotherapy, some sort of rehab care. So if that sort of failed, then that's when injections generally should be considered, in my opinion. And also it's important to mention that BPC 157 is not legal in the UK, so obviously we can't recommend that. And like I say, the results are from all the studies are still very early stages, so again, I wouldn't recommend it even if it was legal because it's just too early days for it. So that pretty much summarizes everything. I don't think there's anything else that I wanted to say about that. So could be useful instead of corticosteroids, and especially the PRP and the Prolotherapy. Can't say about the peptides. And also it's something that's definitely worth considering after trialing some kind of conservative therapy, which like physiotherapy, osteopathy, or any sort of rehab. So I hope that's useful. Thanks, guys.